Picture this. You're hosting a dinner party. The table is set, the wine is open, the charcuterie board is doing its best. And then he shows up. That one friend who never texts first but somehow always materializes when food is involved. He eats half the appetizers, laughs the loudest at every joke, compliments the host with theatrical sincerity, and leaves without so much as offering to do the dishes. In ancient Greece, this person had an official title. He was called a parasitos, and it was practically a career. The Greek parasitos literally means one who eats beside, from para, beside, next to, and sitos, food, grain. No biology, no tapeworms, just a person who parks himself at someone else's table and eats someone else's bread. Originally, the word was perfectly respectable. In Greek temples, parasitoi were religious officials who received meals from the sanctuary in exchange for their service to the gods. Sounds dignified, roughly equivalent to, I get a corporate lunch account, but in return I organize team retreats. Honorable and well-fed at the same time. Then the word started sliding down the social ladder, fast. By the 4th century BC, the parasitos had become a stock comedic character, the ancient world's answer to George Costanza, minus the self-awareness and with a considerably larger appetite. The playwright Antiphanes mapped the type with almost anthropological precision. A man who flatters the wealthy, laughs at their jokes, especially the bad ones, endures humiliation, all to secure a dinner invitation. Think of him as an ancient influencer. The content is flattery, the monetization is food. Menander, the master of Greek New Comedy, practically wrote the parasite into Western literature as an archetype. He has a character named Colax, the flatterer. Colax doesn't just eat other people's food. He builds a whole strategy, studies the host's preferences, memorizes his favorite stories, laughs in exactly the right places. This isn't mooching, it's networking, just very hungry networking. The Romans picked up the character with enormous enthusiasm. In Plautus, Rome's comic playwright, beloved the way Americans loved Friends in the 90s, the parasite appears constantly. He goes by names like Artatrogus, Breadnar, Gnatho, the Jaw, and Curculio, the Weevil. Romans were not subtle with nomenclature, but they were honest. If you think being an ancient parasite was easy, you're underestimating the profession. Based on surviving texts, it required skills any diplomat would respect. Rule 1. Flatter, but calibrate. Flattery too crude offends even the rich. They know when they're being played. Too subtle, and it doesn't register. The goal is sincere delivery with zero sincere content. A masterclass in controlled dishonesty. Rule 2. Be useful at the party. The parasite was expected to entertain, tell jokes, keep the conversation moving, maintain the atmosphere. He functioned as MC, court jester, and party animator simultaneously. For free. Well, for dinner. Rule 3. Know your place, literally. At an ancient symposium, seating was hierarchical. The parasite sat wherever he was put, usually far from the best dishes. But he sat. And he ate. And that was the point. Rule 4. Absorb the jokes. The host might mock the parasite publicly, in front of guests. The parasite had to laugh, loudly, convincingly. This was the unspoken terms of the arrangement. A little dignity in exchange for a full plate. Sound familiar? Watch any office holiday party. The biological meaning came later, and it's a story about academics who really loved the classics. In the 16th century, European naturalists began systematically cataloging the natural world. They needed terms for organisms that live off others, feeding on a host, giving nothing back. And someone, educated men all read Greek back then, remembered an old word, parasitos, one who eats beside, at someone else's expense. A flea on a dog? Parasite. A tapeworm in the intestine? Parasite. Mistletoe on an oak tree? Also a parasite. The concept mapped onto biology perfectly, because fundamentally nothing had changed. One organism lives at the expense of another, with no compensation offered. By the 19th century, the term was fully embedded in science. The flattering dinner guest from Menander's comedy had become a tapeworm in a Pasteur textbook. As career trajectories go, that's a rough one. Here's the thing. The image of the parasite never disappeared from culture. It just moved. In 18th and 19th century literature, the hanger-on, or sponger, is a direct descendant of the ancient parasitos. Think of Uriah Heep in Dickens's David Copperfield, a parasite who's been through an upgrade. He doesn't just eat someone else's food, he methodically takes over the whole operation. Parasite 2.0 with ambition. Or consider Becky Sharp in Thackeray's Vanity Fair, a woman with no money, no connections, and an extraordinary talent for inserting herself into wealthy households and making herself indispensable. She'd have been a legend in ancient Athens. And then there's Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. Best Picture 2020. A family that infiltrates a wealthy household by posing as qualified professionals. The film is literally named after our ancient friend, and that's no accident. Bong Joon-ho took an archetype 2,500 years old and placed it at the center of a conversation about class inequality. From Greek comedy to Korean tragicomedy, the word still carries its charge. Why this is still funny, and a little sad. Here's the thing. We laugh at the ancient parasite because we recognize him. Not necessarily in the mirror, though who knows. But definitely around us. The person who only calls when they need a favor. The colleague who joins a successful project in its final week and lists it first on their resume. The friend who forgot their wallet the precise moment the check arrives. This isn't biology, it's behavior. And apparently it predates the written word. The Greeks didn't just laugh at the parasite. They studied him. The fact that the phenomenon had a name, became a theatrical character, was described by philosophers, tells us that a society was trying to make sense of something it saw constantly. To name a thing is to acknowledge it exists. To acknowledge it exists is to start figuring out how to live with it, or at the very least, to write comedies about it. Postscript. What if the parasite is you? Simple test. Think back over your last 5 social gatherings. How many did you initiate? How many times did you pick up the check or offer to? How many times did you show up with something besides yourself? If the answers are making you uncomfortable, don't panic. You have historical precedent. 2,500 years of cultural tradition. You're not a freeloader. You're a carrier of an ancient archetype. That sounds considerably better at dinner. The word parasite traveled from temple official to stock comic villain, from biological term to Oscar-winning film title. Running through all of it is one simple truth. As long as there are tables with food and people gathered around them, someone will find a way to eat at someone else's expense. And someone else will notice, name it, and eventually write about it.